Thanks, Andy. Maybe it's going to be a bit of a struggle to get you guys enthusiastic about clouds, since there's been so much rain these few days, and also you've had an August with so much rain in it. I can talk a little bit at the end about why we've had an August with so much rain in it, if anyone's interested. But I thought what I would do in this would be maybe to make you see another side of clouds from what you've experienced here, which is hopefully a bit more of a positive one. And so what I'm going to do is show you some pictures of clouds, and nice clouds, and just say why I like them. Maybe introduce a few different types of clouds that are my favourites, and I sort of think of them almost as having personalities, or they just seem to have different characters to me anyway. And then at the end, I'll tell you about a cloud that I went to Australia to see. But right at the beginning, I thought I'd talk a little bit about the Cloud Appreciation Society, which is something I started now, I think it was in 2003 or 2004, not very good with dates. And it was at a talk, not a million miles away from this one. Someone asked me to do a talk about clouds at a literary festival that she was doing, because she knew that I was sort of a cloud enthusiast. And so, of course, I said, yeah, I'd love to do this. It was before the society existed, before any book existed or anything like that. I said, I'd love to do a talk about clouds. And the thing was, in the run-up to the talk, I started thinking, wait a minute, maybe no one's going to come along, because people complain about clouds a lot in this country. It's written into our language. Someone's got a cloud hanging over them. There's a cloud on the horizon, all these negative associations. And it got me worried, and I thought maybe people aren't going to come along. So I thought, if I give it a name, if I give this talk a name, which sort of sounds intriguing, then people will be more likely to come. So I called it the inaugural lecture of the Cloud Appreciation Society. Even though, like I say, there wasn't any society or anything. It's just sort of funny idea. I thought it sounded interesting. And everyone came along. It was totally full. And the problem was everyone came up to me afterwards and said, how do I join your society? And I had done these badges to give out, just sort of as a funny idea. And that sort of occurred to me, wait a minute, maybe there should be a society for the appreciation of clouds. Maybe we need it. Maybe someone needs to stand up for clouds. And so I started one. I sort of put something up on the internet, put a website up, and did this sort of automatic thing where you just pay. It just costs. Initially, it cost nothing to join, and then I got so it just covered postage and the printing of things, printing of the certificate. When you join, you get a certificate, and it says, "We do hereby certify that the person's name was elected as a member of this society on and the date, and will henceforth seek to persuade all who listen of the wonder and beauty of clouds," because I like the idea of a bit of a campaigning element to this. And it's spread in that way things can on the internet virally, of its own accord. I've never done any sort of advertising or anything like that. It just sort of spread, and people told other people, and and now we've got 13,500 members in 63 countries, something like that. And one thing that they do is they send in photographs. This is the part of the website that really sort of expanded and became the kind of dominant part of the website, is the gallery. Because nowadays so many people have little digital cameras, and it's so easy to kind of upload stuff. So that sort of technology has really helped to make this part of the society and the website grow. And so the photographs that I'll show you today are photographs sent in by members or just visitors to the website. And some photos that people send in are quite kind of unusual clouds you wouldn't normally see. This is what's known as a full streak hole. And I'll maybe tell you a bit about some of these clouds as we go along. This is when you have a layer of cloud. That's an outer cumulus layer, it's called, that layer of cloud there. And it's made of droplets, but they're below freezing level, and below the temperature that they would normally freeze, and they need nuclei. They need something to get started on, like a bit of grit is necessary for a pearl to form inside an oyster. And it's a little bit similar in the atmosphere. You need particles, be they salt or volcanic ash or soot from pollution or anything. You need little particles for the droplets to freeze, and sometimes it can just start in one part of the cloud, and as they freeze, the droplets grow into larger ice crystals, and they begin to fall below, and you get this fall streak showing there. So sometimes they're unusual. Sometimes they're really quite rare clouds, like this Kelvin Helmholtz wave cloud. That is, looks like breaking waves. Forms when you have two layers of air shearing against each other, traveling at different speeds, perhaps different directions. Sometimes they're not like really strange clouds, but they're in a sort of, they're taken to an extreme, turned up to 11. So this is a lenticular cloud. These form in the lee of mountains. This is the island of South Georgia, the Southern Ocean. And so you often get these in islands because it's to do with a stream of moist air reaching an obstacle and having to rise to go over the top of it. Sometimes in the lee of this obstacle, as the air rises and falls in a wave-like motion, which it can do, you can get these lenticular sort of disc-like clouds that sometimes look like UFOs. You get them forming at the crests of these waves. So, of course, those grey seals were all given memberships to the Cloud Appreciation Society. You can see they look like they're appreciating the display. This is one of the reasons why I kind of feel positively about clouds, is I think that they bring variety and drama to our skies. And although many people perhaps in Britain think it would be fantastic if it was a blue sky with no clouds for a while, I think after a time people would miss it, and they would start to get bored. I find there's a monotony if you have blue skies the whole time, and clouds are like sort of expressions of the atmosphere. So I also think they're one of nature's sort of most poetic displays. And they're a little bit like emotions in the sense that we are here and they kind of blow over us. They kind of come over us and we sort of experience them, and then they dissipate or they move on. So sometimes they are just beautiful, and they're not a particularly special cloud type. I mean, this is a sort of cloud that we had yesterday with the showers and the overcast sky for a lot of it. If this, from above, it would look like this. And when you have a low sun like that, and the sun's glancing across these turrets, these are stratocumulus clouds. You have the turrets of the clouds sticking up. It's like this kind of fantastical terrain, shifting geology of the sky. Sometimes they're just straightforward. People send in a nice sunset or something. Here's one for Andy. So these are sort of streamers of clouds that are formed orographically as air has to rise to go over a mountain. By rising, it expands, and as it expands, it cools. And as it cools, its moisture can form into droplets. But one of the things I particularly like is when members of the society send in photographs of clouds that look like things, because I think there are two sides to cloud spotting. One is to look up, one is just to look up and think that's nice. But one of them is to look up and see what that cloud is, maybe, think in a kind of nerdy way about what type of cloud is that, what does it signify in terms of the weather that's approaching. And another side of it is more about kind of what does that cloud make me feel. And, what do I see? And I see, in a way, the kind of imagination that we can project onto the sky is sort of one of the joys of cloud spotting. So when people send in clouds that look like things, I think it's brilliant. And I try and encourage it. And I think this could only really happen if you had this network of people across the world, thousands and thousands of people across the world who are kind of aware of the sky, who are looking up and who are carrying a little kind of camera around with them. And then they notice something and they take it and send it in. You couldn't send a photographer out and say, go and take us a whole bunch of photographs of clouds that look like things. They come back with one or two. The rest, if they came back with more, they'd be a bit rubbish. So it really relies on this kind of linking together of a network of people on perhaps even on a global scale. So this is very much a sort of society of the internet age, I see it as anyway. So yeah, first one is a dog barking. This is I don't know what type of dog it is. It's a Cumulus congestus cloud. Large cumulus. You have cumulus are the fair weather puffy clouds you see on a sunny day. They form on top of thermals rising from the sun-warmed ground. And when they get very big, they're called congestus, Cumulus congestus. You see a lot of animals in the sky. I don't know why. This is a dragonfly. Cirrus clouds with little fall streaks. Cirrus are high clouds, and they are composed of ice crystals. The low clouds are composed of droplets, and middle-level clouds tend to be a mixture of the two. Then this next one is a picture of the Michelin Man going to rob a bank. I guess that would be a Cumulus mediocris, which is a middle-sized cumulus cloud. And cumulus are particularly good for finding shapes in because they have crisp edges and because they are in constant motion. So if you don't see a shape this moment, it'll probably appear in the next one. But it does mean if you want to kind of capture it, you've got to be really fast to take a picture of a cumulus cloud. And clouds seem, when you look up at them, to kind of move and develop and change in quite a languid, relaxed way. But actually, you know, look at them and then look away for a minute and look back, and it's changed really quite considerably. And so it's a sort of optical illusion, this movement of them. When you sit and study them, you can see that they are changing really quite fast. But from a distance away, it seems quite gradual. And that's one of the sort of important elements to me of cloud spotting, is the way it seems to make you have to slow down. And there is a kind of need, I think, for us to slow down in society, both from the point of view of our health and feeling grounded. Ironically, I think to have your head in the clouds on a regular basis makes you feel more grounded. But there's also a need to slow down in terms of allowing for space for creative ideas and thoughts to come, in the same way that when you go to sleep, ideas can appear. If you have a time of doing nothing, ideas can appear, which you can then move into a different mode and do something with. Well, I think there's a sort of, just on a short-term, daily basis, stopping and just kind of tuning in to what's happening in the sky, it kind of allows little spaces for that, and little sort of spaces of meteorological meditation, really, is what I think of it as. This one's Salvador Dali. You can see he's got his sort of lovely curly moustache there. Profiles of faces are very good in these cumulus clouds, although this is stratocumulus. So when you get lots of cumulus clouds and they all begin to join together, it's called stratocumulus. It joins up into a kind of big layer, but they're still puffy. And it's rather different from the nimbostratus, which are the kind of grey Tupperware skies that people hate so much, which kind of cause drizzle. This is a more energetic layer of clouds, and so you've got more of a variety of tones and shapes to it. And then a rather ominous one here, the Grim Reaper. Ooh. And then I talked before about lenticular clouds looking a bit like UFOs. So this is kind of perhaps, really giving it its UFO best. This would be, you can't see the raised ground. And is that actually, well, I haven't really noticed that before. Is that mountain? Maybe there is a bit of mountain there. And maybe the wind is blowing this way off that mountain, if that is one, and it's rising up, and then really some miles, it can be tens of miles downwind from the mountain, you can get this crest of a wave of air. When the atmosphere is quite stable, these waves of air rise and fall in waves-like motions. And so, that would be forming at the crest of one of these waves. And what's interesting about these lenticular clouds, what I particularly like about them is You notice a cumulus cloud, a fair weather, puffy cotton wool cloud. When it's a sort of, there's a breeze on a summer's day, you notice them kind of tumble along in the breeze in quite a sort of herding sheep or just like kind of tumbling cotton wool. These clouds can be in quite a stiff breeze, these lenticular clouds, meaning lens-shaped in Latin. They can be in quite a stiff breeze, but they hover in the same place, even though the wind is blowing really quite strongly. And it's a little bit like on a river or a stream when there's a boulder in the stream and the water's flowing over the boulder. Just behind the boulder, in the lee of the boulder, you can sometimes see a standing wave. You know, the surface of the water is going like that, and everything's sort of rushing through in the current of the stream. But the shape of the surface remains generally in the same place. Do you know what I'm talking about? With that sort of standing wave. And this is a little bit like that, an atmospheric version of it. The wind is blowing along, a steady stream, and it rises up, and as it reaches a certain height at the crest of this wave, enough of the moisture, it's cooled enough for the moisture to join into droplets, and the droplets form. So if this was coming towards us, the droplets would form at the front there, and they would speed through with the wind, and then when it dipped down again at the back here, the droplets would evaporate again. So they're all speeding through the cloud, but the cloud itself remains, the overall shape of it remains in the same place so long as the wind is at a steady speed. But that may be a bit involved, but that's one reason why I like these clouds, because they have that slightly sort of, it feels like a slightly unique, way of that they form. This next cloud that was sent in, you know when you have a party and you feel you should invite the neighbours because it's going to make a bit of a noise. And then this is when the old lady from next door actually, you think they'll never turn up, don't you? But the old lady from next door actually arrives. She's arriving at the front door, she's got a bottle of gin there. And this one here is of a skateboarder on, I guess that's like a kind of ramp. Again, Cirrus Clouds, these are the high ice crystal clouds, and I think these ones are always good for movement because they're more translucent than the middle or the low clouds. So you always have a sense of things moving, being a bit blurry. So yeah, that's why it could be a dancer, I guess, but I thought a skater. And then this one is just two cats dancing the salsa. With a sort of disco light effect going on behind. Now, I went to Australia to see a cloud. The reason being that I noticed it and I was reading in a book about clouds. I was looking at pictures and I saw this sort of thing, long tube of a cloud. I thought that's a roll cloud, that one, but I was kind of intrigued by it. And I read the kind of caption, and it said, "The morning glory, the fanciful name of this phenomenon, conveys the feeling of elation which its passage arouses." And I thought, that's quite interesting, a cloud that's named after the sort of sense, the sensation, the feeling of elation as it passes over you. I thought it sounds like an amazing thing to go and see. And I discovered that it was all the way in Australia, and I thought, well, I'm not sure if I can really justify going to Australia, but the more I looked into it, the more intrigued I became about it, and the more I realised it's sort of a must-see for a cloud spotter. What's interesting about it is that glider pilots congregate in this place in Australia where the cloud forms. It forms at a certain time of year, the end of September, beginning of October. Glider pilots congregate there because they can surf it like it's a wave. Surf it like sort of surfers on an ocean wave, and so I thought, well, it would be intriguing to I'd just be really interesting to go and see what their attitudes are about it and to see how it all worked, and so I managed to get to do an article about it, and then I did these little films for Channel 4, those 3-minute wonder films that you get after the news sometimes, and they'll sort of let anyone do it if you've got an all right idea. You don't have to have made a film before. So I made a few of those about this trip and did a piece about it, and I went out there. It forms in this place called Burketown, which this is Burketown. I arrived at, and it's in the middle of the outback in northern Queensland. 178 people live there, and it's one of those places where the flying doctor comes once a week. There's one restaurant in the town. There you go, Licensed Morning Glory Restaurant. There's a picture of on the mural, a picture of the kind of cloud there. It was closed for the 2 weeks I was there, and then there was one pub and one cafe. And so I was hanging out there, and every morning this cloud appears. When it does come, it appears very, very early in the morning at daybreak. And that was around about 5 o'clock during the time I was there. And I'm not really a morning person. I find it quite difficult getting up in the morning, getting my head going. And so I would have to get up very early each morning, and I'd go down onto the savannah. It's incredibly flat, this part of Queensland, and it's right next to the Gulf of Carpentaria, the large gulf at the top of Australia. And this sort of flatness is one of the reasons that this roll of cloud can kind of appear. And if anyone's interested, I can tell you a bit more about how it forms and why. But I'd have to get up very, very early each morning and stand out there in the hope, waiting for a cloud on the horizon. And it just didn't seem to be coming. And I started to get quite worried about this. Do you know what I mean? Because I'd gone such a long way. I couldn't kind of go back and say, look, I'm sorry the cloud didn't come. It was all a bit of a disaster. Sorry about that. I felt I needed to sort of be there for it to see it. And then everywhere I went in town, which there are only, like, as I say, 3 or 4 places to go. This is in the post office. They'd have these pictures up on the wall, which sort of were like taunting me slightly, I felt, as I was getting more and more stressed and desperate, really, for this cloud to appear. And then someone said it was getting to the end, it was getting into the second week. I was getting quite worried. And then someone said, why don't you, sort of as a joke, why don't you go and see dawn on Bentinck Island, which is a little island just off the coast. An old Aboriginal lady who's got a dance that she does. It's called a Wamur dance, and she does it, and it sort of brings the wind that carries the morning glory sort of thing, and it might be quite funny to do. And I said, I was like desperate at this stage. So I was like, dawn, okay, yeah, all my hopes were sort of on dawn, basically. And this is dawn on the beach. We turned up, but we couldn't phone ahead or anything. We just turned up, and then dawn was one of the women sitting on the beach. It's an island of old ladies, and they have banned men from the island because of there are a lot of drink sort of issues. And they're all sitting there, and then Dawn got up and did her dance. I have this on one of the films, but not on the film I'm going to show. So annoyingly, you can't sort of see how it works. But it's sort of, backwards and forwards. You can kind of get the idea. And a lot of stamping, clapping her hands, and then one of the other ladies said, "Can you feel it? Can you feel the wind coming?" I could feel a bit of a breeze. I wasn't quite sure. And I went back, and of course it didn't arrive the next morning. And I thought, right, well, this is really going badly wrong. But then the locals in the town said that there are a couple of things that I ought to be looking out for, which are kind of signals that maybe the cloud is going to arrive. And one of these is that in the pub, the fridges of the windows on the front of the fridges can sort of steam up, mist up. And that is an indication that there's enough moisture in the air for this cloud to appear. So that is one sort of sign you look out for. And the other is in the cafe, the cheap tables curl upwards in the corners. So, that next day they didn't come, but later that afternoon, I went into the pub. And I went to the cafe. And it did come that following morning. It came too early to film that morning because it was dark. But the next day it came again, and it tends, like much of the weather, it tends to go in kind of cycles. And so you get one morning when it arrives, and then it arrives for about 3, gets a little bit later each day, maybe 3 or 4 mornings, and then it stops again. And so the first time it arrived, I got up at 4:30, and the sky was dark. It was a full moon. The light was just rising up on the eastern sky, and I could see a line along just above the sort of horizon. And I'd heard enough from what the locals had said to know that this was the cloud arriving. So I got all really overexcited, and the photographer who I was with, I got him up, sort of thing. And then it was an amazing, eerie experience, because, as I say, it was still dark, and it came over with a kind of glistening, silvery appearance to the front of it, smooth as it rolled along, and then more of a puffy appearance as it rolled away. And it goes at about 35 miles an hour as it travels, and the wind picks up before it arrives, and then just as it's going over you, it dies down. It becomes quite still, and suddenly the sky is overcast, and the clouds have all disappeared, and then the wind picks up again as it's gone. I'm just going to show you the thing about the little film I made in which the pilots talk about what it's like to go and surf this cloud. Let's just see if I can get...
These glider pilots are about to go surfing on a wave of air which forms around a cloud called the Morning Glory. The cloud is in the shape of an enormous tube and rolls in at first light over the coast of Queensland from Australia's Gulf of Carpentaria. It offers what's got to be the most exciting gliding experience in the world.
You get on it, come over the face, and you can surf down. You can have a wing in the cloud and surf right down to the bottom edge.
With the absolute smoothness, being able to travel at high speed, the barest movements of the controls, that's completely different to how you normally fly a glider.
Very often you'll get a very strong primary cloud which rolls along very quickly.
You can jump back from the first primary wave often to secondary and third, fourth, and extend it like that. There's times when I reckon I've probably done about 500 kilometres.
The chances of something bad happening are high. You're flying at quite low altitudes over remote areas, and they're full of crocodiles.
If a surfer were to go too far into the back end of the wave, he wipes out. Equally, we wipe out too, but I think with probably more disastrous consequences.
I think you'd only have maybe a dozen people in the world that really have done it. It is unique, that's for sure.
The word hasn't spread much yet. It's good to share it with everybody, but I wouldn't like to see it becoming like a traffic jam.
Generally 10 or 15 minutes into the flight that the sun comes across the top of the cloud, and when you look back at that sight with this fantastic golden sun breaking behind it, it's you'd swear that you're in heaven. It's that good.
Just read out I think any society is a good idea to have a manifesto, and so I did from an early stage. I came up with a manifesto of the Cloud Appreciation Society, and I thought I would just end by reading that. We believe that clouds are unjustly maligned. and that life would be immeasurably poorer without them. We think that clouds are nature's poetry and the most egalitarian of her displays, since everyone has a fantastic view of them. We pledge to fight blue sky thinking wherever we find it. Life would be dull if we had to look up at cloudless monotony day after day. We seek to remind people that clouds are expressions of the atmosphere's moods, and they can be read like those on a person's face. We believe that clouds are for dreamers, and their contemplation benefits the soul. Indeed, all who consider the shapes they see in them will save money on psychoanalysis bills. And so we say to all who listen, look up, marvel at the ephemeral beauty, and always remember to live life with your head in the clouds. Thank you.